Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I am once again joined with three great friends of mine, wonderful researchers, and I'm going to let them each introduce themselves, but we tried to do a roundtable to share. We had a great conversation, but it didn't end up staying recorded because of some weather issues on my end. But thank you guys so much. So we got Brooks, Agnew, Dan Willis, and Brad Olson, and I'm sure very familiar to a lot of people already, but thank you for doing this again.
Sure.
Awesome.
Our pleasure.
What'd you say?
My favorite people.
I know. So it's like, me too, definitely. So I just want to kind of go around. Whoever wants to start, I guess maybe it's easier if I just go with who's in the first box and corner over there. Brooks, Agnew, do you want to just share a little bit about yourself? And
I graduated first in my
bio.
class alphabetically.
What's that? Oh, right. Yeah, A. We'll start with the alphabetical.
I am Brooks Agnew. I'm an engineer in my day job. In my night job, when I put my superhero outfit on, I'm a talk radio host of X Squared Radio from 8 to 11 on Sunday evenings. And Laura and I have known each other for about a decade, spoken around the world, different places, sometimes the same venue, but our mission is the same. Trying to wake people up, enlighten people, give them the information they need so they can make good decisions in their own lives and take control of their own life situation. So that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooks. So Brad Olson.
Yeah, I've known
about yourself.
Laura Eisenhower for about 6-7 years since we met at Contact in the Desert. Both public speakers, along with Brooks. We all seem to find ourselves at all these great conferences and speaking together and getting to know each other and going out for dinner. And yeah, I couldn't be pleased to be with such great people. I can't wait to meet you, Dan. But I'm the author of 9 books, going on 10, getting a lot of work done now with all this free time. All our conferences got canceled, and even my ski pass doesn't work up here in Tahoe. We just got 3 feet of snow and nothing to do but watch it come down.
Wow.
So working on my 10th book, which is called Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet, which will be out at the end of this year. And I also have a YouTube channel called CCC Publishing, Esoteric Series, bradolson.com, cccpublishing.com if you want to see the books that I've done, and I publish other authors, and also numerous Facebook pages for my various projects that I'm working on. And another event that I produce called the How Weird Street Fair has also been postponed. We're hoping to pick up the pieces in the fall, but it even remains to be seen whether any public events are going to occur this year. So it is a game changer of a year. Let's say that on the setup here. Never seen anything quite like this before, and I think you guys would agree.
Oh, definitely.
Trying to make the most of it.
Yeah. Thank God for internet and being able to get together and do this. So Dan Willis, tell us a little bit about you, and yeah, brief little bio. And
yeah, I just put a little backdrop of, the National Press Club is how I got heavily involved in this as a top secret military witness back in 2001. They were attempting to disclose to the people of the world about these illegal secret government operations, the extraterrestrial presence, that we've had the technologies, that we could have gotten off of nuclear oil and coal for decades ago. After the Bush administration denied the congressional hearing and the mainstream media effectively sanitized it from the public's awareness using a limited hangout, I spent 10 years meeting with scientists and inventors around the planet, vetting these technologies. Many of them received national security orders. Anyway, I became very aware that not only, being an ex-ABC newsman, that our mainstream media has been orchestrated and controlled, and that our planet has been technologically hijacked all these decades. And, I am honored to join these other voices here and helping bring awareness.
awesome. Yeah. And we've definitely gotten more acquainted over the last year, and it's just been really great to get to know you more, and really glad all 3 of you are with me. Yeah. It's been a long journey just being in this disclosure community. And so I just kind of want to go around and make sure everybody gets a chance to answer these, questions, and any thoughts or questions that you guys feel called to bring forward, of course, jump in. But obviously, we're all getting a lot of information about coronavirus. And, perhaps it's a bioweapon or a cover-up for mass arrests. Maybe it's a little bit of everything. But just because this is all getting our attention pretty much constantly, what are you guys assessing currently about the situation that we're in on the planet? And I don't know who wants to start it. I don't like to pick. Okay, Brooks.
I decided to go back in history a little bit and read and listen to the documentaries about the 1918 outbreak of the Spanish flu. This was a very similar situation, except the flu was, the particular strain H1N1 was very, very virulent. And instead of attacking the elderly, it attacked people ages 20 to 40. And I think primarily that was because in 1918, that was the age of people that were moving. There was war going on, preparations for war going on. The very young, the very old, they didn't move. The 20 to 40 age group are the ones that were in camps. They were in rail cars. They were at large meetings. They were in trenches together. And the disease spread like wildfire. Now, it was a particularly bad strain. There were people that showed symptoms and the next day died. It killed 60 million people. 500 million people contracted that disease in about a year and a half. It was, in a word, devastating. However, one city was spared. And that city is the city that practiced to the T the guidelines that are being set out by the CDC today, which is quarantine, which is isolation of that city from outside. They shut off the ports, they shut off the roads, they didn't allow public meetings, people stayed in their homes. And what happened is the infection rate stopped. And nobody died in San Francisco. It was spared. And that type in a shadow, here we are 100 years later, instead of 1918, it's 2020. We have a similar, very, very fast-moving virus, although it's not as severe for the ages, say, up to 75 years old. But over 75 years old, it's almost debilitating in its ability to put you down. And the same tactic is being used. Fortunately, I think maybe most of the nations learned from history what to do, and we have the power to do it. And hopefully this 2 weeks of not moving around, not skiing and not meeting and having conferences or whatever will stop this thing from spreading. And I hope it works. I really do. I hope it works. But it also, a couple things are happening along with this that are allowing our government and other governments to flex their muscle. One is the secrecy that China practiced when it broke out. When the outbreak happened, China could have reacted very quickly. They could have alerted the world. This could have been stopped in a month. But China was secretive, and then China exported the virus. And China actually accomplished a couple of goals that they really, really wanted to accomplish. Number one is they wanted to stop the protests in Hong Kong. And they did, like overnight. And the second thing they wanted to do is they wanted to strike back at the United States for their sanctions and for the trade war. And they accomplished that as well. They completely eliminated the Trump gains that were made since 2017. So those two goals have been accomplished. Now we wait and see what happens. That's my feeling.
I would like to add something on the outbreak 100 years ago. This was also the advent of vaccines, and many of our soldiers who are going off to World War I were given the vaccine, and many of the returning soldiers had it. This came out just recently that the country of Greece did not vaccine their people and were almost universally spared any of the virus spread. So now we're coming into this 100 years later, we got the COVID-19, which stands for coronavirus discovered in 2019. And the Chinese were all given mandatory vaccines last fall, right before this whole thing came out.
Yeah.
The vaccine contained, some sources I'm reading, a replicating, digitized, and controllable RNA, which was activated by the 60 gigahertz millimeter 5G waves. So we can talk about the 5G, how that may be a way to activate. And they were all just turned on, quite coincidentally, in Wuhan, just as other countries are using this 60 gigahertz 5G, along with the smart dust that everyone in the globe has been inhaling through chemtrails. That's why we have, some say that someone is cured and the virus can be digitally reactivated at any time, and then the person can literally drop dead. We saw in some videos from Wuhan, somebody's just walking and then falls flat on their face. And also this Diamond Princess cruise ship that was docked in Japan was specifically equipped with 60 gigahertz 5G. So it could be this way to remote assassinate anyone in these 5G zones. You don't even have to be inflicted with the coronavirus to fall sick. And Americans we're breathing this stuff in the smart dust that has been rained down upon us through chemtrails. I really like the work of Sophia Smallstorm. She's gone quiet lately. I wonder if she's been silenced, but a few years ago, she was doing fantastic research collecting water samples after heavy chemtrail days and finding Morgellon fibers, finding the smart dust in there, of course, along with aluminum, strontium, and borium. So you add this combination of vaccines and chemtrails laced with smart dust and 5G, and your body becomes internally digitized and can be remotely controlled. And I think we absolutely have to understand that we are being terraformed without our permission. In fact, this is some chapters in my next book, Beyond Esoteric, the transhumanist agenda. And so a person's organs the function of our organs can be stopped remotely if, let's say, someone is deemed non-compliant. Wuhan was this test run for ID 2020. The elite call this 60 gigahertz millimeter 5G wave the V wave. The virus wave, are they mocking us? Trump has created a spaceport force in part to combat this weaponized technology, but I think we need to vehemently reject the attempt at mandatory vaccine issue because our lives could very well depend on it. And Denmark as a nation just said, we don't have the vaccine yet, but it's absolutely mandatory you get it when we get it. What about testing? What about checking if it's safe? None of that is happening. So I'm very, very dubious of a mandatory vaccine rollout or any kind of vaccine without full testing. How about you guys?
Yeah, Dan, what's your thoughts?
Oh, this has gone all the way back to 9/11. Right after 9/11, they had the Anthrax Scare. All of you remember. This allowed Bush to initiate Project BioShield. Project BioShield was able to make billions of these vaccines that the Supreme Court has ruled they're not liable because the nature of them are unsafe. And of all places where they were building them was the island of Realms, which was Heinrich Himmler's Nazi bioweapons laboratory. So this was happening back in 2001, and some of the senators were talking about some of this stuff. Where some of the people that were brought into this, they had to have top secret clearances, and they had to. They say one senator said, what are they doing? Are they practicing with syringes and things? In other words, there was a plan to have forced vaccination going on a long time ago. And I think my feeling on this whole thing that's going on right now, and there's a whole lot of, I apologize, I had an emergency. I had to miss out on some of what Brooks was saying. But there is I think what they've done is they flipped the situation 180 degrees. Instead of being a situation where they're going to have forced vaccinations and everything, they're using it in order to take down the entire dark cabal with extractions.
So. I hope that is what's happening.
I hope so too.
I think that we're on the threshold of something that well, I'd like to say we're at a juxtaposition. I call a juxtaposition a point in space where we have all these choices come together, and there's one way in and there's 100 ways out. And I think we're at that place right now. Generally speaking, I think Americans are pulling together. We work together. I don't think there's a place for violent protests. Antifa hasn't raised their head. There have been no riots. People are trying to get through this the best way that we can. And we know that the economy will bounce back. It'll bounce back stronger than ever. But, President Trump said something very, very, very profound at the recent news conference. He said, we can get the economy back, and probably pretty fast too, but we can't get these people back. So it's important that we take these measures in order to keep people from getting infected with this virus. Let's just take a pause, let this thing die out. The sunshine and spring will bring, a respite from this virus. And then we can get back to doing, what it was we were doing. And there are some other suggestions. I know that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have also said that they are going to do a jubilee on all debt payments for mortgages, and it could go for up to a year. But certainly 1 or 2 months would definitely make it possible for people that own single families and income-producing properties to maybe not have to get 100% of their rent monies in order to survive. And everybody can work together. This can all work well. But the other thing people are noticing, and I don't want to skew this conversation anyway, but I have seen a lot of reports people have been sending me about enormous rail of military equipment moving around the country. Mm-hmm. Most of it's moving to Chicago in the east and different, but we're talking hundreds of thousands of tons of equipment. Humvees, tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, 105s, all this stuff moving around. Now, there's not a lot of troops marching down any streets, but this is happening in Manhattan. It's happening in Chicago. It's happening in Miami. And people are going, hey, what's going on? Keep in mind, these are the good guys. They're the good guys. These aren't UN vehicles. These are our vehicles. And we also just got done spending $1.5 trillion over the last 2 years building all this up. A lot of this is brand spanking new equipment. In a way, I think what's happening is President Trump is flexing the national muscle to say, look, we realize there's 20 or 30 million foreign citizens inside our country. Don't get any smart ideas. We can take anybody, anytime. So settle down. I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah. And I really feel that. I want to thank you all for your responses. Really amazing and in depth. It definitely feels like a crossroads, like a timeline choice. Remember those books from the 70s, Choose Your Own Adventure? You get to the bottom of it and you get to pick where you're going to go from here. I tend to reflect on that, but then, I mean, how much co-creative say do we, have in these times is the question. So one of the reasons I gathered everybody is because it's a really powerful day astrologically. The aspects are so strong and amazing. And because Mars and Pluto are working together, that power on a creative level is huge. So setting intention for a day like today, I just felt to be so important. But it seems that the so-called good guys, are the ones that are looking out for the human race, are responding to an attack and leveraging this attack in order to corner these folks and to protect us. I mean, is that basically what you all are in agreement to?
It's a prime opportunity. I think Brad's right.
Yeah.
If
not now, when?
Intuitively feeling, Laura, I feel really happy. I feel like we're in a transformative window here that's happening. And how else would this have not happened if it wouldn't be for your great grandfather setting up a plan, way back when? It appears that with Admiral Mike Rogers taking over the NSA, they've got the goods. They know where everybody is. They know where they're all at. They know all their hiding spots. They know who they all are. They've got all the connections. They've got the resources to extract them all. And they've got the whole system set up with changes, Uniform Code of Military Justice, the sealed indictments, the expansion of Guantanamo Bay. All this has been, all the groundwork's been laid.
And that is a relief. I think it's really hard for people to know what to believe and what not to believe. It's so hard to feel like we're functioning on the same page as just, people that are interested in, research and discovering truth. I feel like we, though, resonate on in a similar place. There's a lot of criticism about Q, though. Misinformation, it's MK Ultra, it's disinformation. I don't know if you guys want to get into that, and I think you were about to say something, Brad. So before maybe we go there, did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, that's really a good point to bring up, Laura, because I would say right now is going to tell us for sure if Q is real or not, because this is the opportunity. This is the chance we can have these mass arrests. And if they don't happen, then we've just been getting a lot of smoke blown up the pipe, right? But I would say that this corona is a cover-up for the largest military intelligence operations the world has ever seen. The entire planet is going under lockdown. Australia, the whole planet right now. I'm here in California and Nevada, up in Lake Tahoe, and Nevada, all businesses shuttered. You see pictures from Las Vegas. They're putting up boards over the businesses to prevent looting. I mean, we are going into unprecedented territory. So the plan is total shutdown. We may lose the internet next week. YouTube and other channels or the entire internet might go dark. I noticed Before It's News, which is like a news aggregate site that I enjoy getting alternative perspectives from, all the videos do not work on it, at least from last night until this morning. Nothing works. So it might be this slow rollout. We're just going to start losing platform after platform. And this is exactly what the plan was. There was a guy named Drake who was interviewed by David Wilcock a few years ago. And I think a lot of people just got put off because nothing ever happened. Well, now it's happening. And this guy, Drake, he laid it out exactly the way it is happening right now, that there would have to be a full shutdown around the world, because it's really the only way that you're going to get these, to remove the evil in government, the bankers, the globalists, the elites, Hollywood, sports stars who are involved with Epstein Island and other
we've come real
scandals.
Far with exposing all that.
Yeah, there were
feels like a D-Day, though. It's like the dark and light are really in a showdown. Sorry, what was that?
Well, there were a couple things going along with what Brad said that happened in the last 2 or 3 days. One is that there was a big bug out that was stopped. A bunch of corporate jets were getting ready to take off, and military moved in and blocked the runway. They blocked the runway so that these elites could not escape. The second thing is they've moved several of these empty cruise ships. These cruise ships can handle 2,000-3,000 people. Now, they don't make good hospitals, but they do make good prisons. And they've moved them not to the resort areas of Miami, but they've moved them to New York and to the West Coast, near Hollywood, near Santa Monica. And I think the plan is what they're going to do is do these mass arrests, move them to the ships. Because how I know this is I was listening to a guy who is active duty Coast Guard. Coast Guard is under a little different law than the other armed services, in the sense that they don't fight on land. They fight on the water, and they are governed by maritime law. But they're able to do things under, quote, martial law that can't be done on land because of posse comitatus. Posse comitatus does not apply to the water, namely the major rivers and the ocean. So that means that the military can actively participate in arrests on the water. So once these boats set sail, they're going to Gitmo. They're going to be doing trials on the way. The convictions will be finished by the time the boat docks. And this is how some of these mass arrests could take place.
So do any of you, oh, go ahead, Dan. I was just going to ask you.
Oh, I was just saying what's so cool about this is that we are not doing dark, evil things like they do. We're using the rule of law.
Right.
By using the rule of law, everybody on the whole planet can see that we're not our forces that are going in and taking these people out of their hiding places and putting them on ships or wherever they're putting them, getting them ready for military law. Everybody can see that we're using the rule of law. We're not doing nefarious things like they do.
Right. And so we have the greater universal forces on our side. I mean, we're in a powerful shift. Nobody can doubt that this particular window has been highly prophesized. The alignments, show that, I mean, it's a metamorphosis that's not going to happen overnight. The caterpillar cannot emerge as the butterfly without being in the darkness for a little bit. And the different components behind that level of shift and change, is hitting everybody, very differently. Do any of you feel though that because there is positive intel that there is a bit of infiltration with some of the information we're getting just to deter people away? Or is it just something that just seems targeted in terms of the white hats trying to communicate perhaps through somebody like Q? And we don't have to focus too much on the Q thing because I know that creates a lot of controversy for people. But I mean, there might be a bit of a mixed bag because it seems like the archonic systems are always about imitation. How can we give them something that they want and expect and torque it just enough to create more conquer and divide between us?
Well, if we're talking about just under 160,000 sealed indictments, that is a fact. They're ready to go. But if we're talking about Hollywood elites, look, we live in a celebrity worshiping culture. So how do you take these people down without freaking a lot of people out? If they're favorite sports stars, if they're favorite movie stars, even rock stars or people within government. I think that's the real sticky wicket here.
Self-quarantine.
You're taking out half of Congress. How do you do that without totally freaking out America?
I'm pretty freaked out.
They are pretty freaked out.
Brad.
I mean, I've seen some of my favorite celebrities with no makeup on.
Yeah, maybe without adrenochrome. We can talk about that
exactly.
too.
Yeah. Keep going.
Just to make this point, but we're also talking about removing the fiat currency system, going back to a gold-backed economy. So this is what I mean to say, if Q is real, if all these things we've been told about for a couple years now, going back to a gold-backed currency, the global currency reset, and then we can reactivate the NESARA, GSARA laws, which wipe out all debts. It relates us into Tesla's future. I mean, then we could have the rollout of free energy. We could be talking about anti-gravity and what the Space Force really has in their fleet. And then it could give us up to 6,000 medical cures, new free energy devices, and many other beautiful things. This is the way it should have been all this time, but we got hijacked by the cabal. So that means we're going to have to deal with up to about 6 weeks closure of everything, even an internet and news blackout, which the military will lead the way. And I like what you said, Bruce. It's Brooks. It's not the UN. It is our military, and we know that our military is loyal to the president. So if we are able to get through this 6-week period without too much disruption, we're going to come through on the other side, and this could be a really beautiful thing that we could be in the dawning of a golden age. And I think all four of us want to see nothing but that to be happening.
Absolutely.
1,000-year period of peace.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. And Dan, you sound like you had something to say.
Well, you know, it's interesting, you know, the mainstream media, it's so important to pay attention to who the mainstream media attacks, who they celebrate, who they ignore. You know, they've been attacking Q for some time, lunatic fringe, conspiracy theory, right wing, trying to associate it with violent groups and everything. When Q, from the very beginning, all it has been doing is saying, isn't it interesting how when you ask a question, you know, it becomes in other words, all Q has been doing is asking questions of the public. They haven't been providing the answers. All they do is ask questions, and that seems to be such a threat to them because it's making people do their own research. This is where awakening happens, when people have a question come to mind and then they start to research it. And for the last, since October of 2017, all Q has been doing is asking questions. And because people have been looking into what are the answers to these questions, it has caused this this global awakening, you know, with people who are researching Q. And this is why it's such a threat to the mainstream media.
Right. It doesn't stink of all the stuff that is so old paradigm as far as propping up a leader and it being all about followers or money or steering the narrative. I mean, there's nothing more empowering than having the free thinking ability to do research and then form our own discerning observations and opinions from it. So I don't know where you might want to shift gears at all. I mean, just to bring in the positive, we're in such a, and we have been talking the positive, but just to kind of hone in on it a little bit more. Obviously, we're dealing with UFOs, ETs, different agendas, lots of different competing agendas. Where do you see the exopolitical pieces to what we're seeing on the world stage? You know, I guess that still can help us to maintain human sovereignty without getting caught maybe in an agenda that might seem okay on the surface, but actually not. I know that's a loaded question, but anything that kind of jumps out for either, you know, any of you, you know, maybe starting with Brooks, because we haven't heard from you in a minute or two.
Well, I'm encouraged by the opening of the frontier of space. We really haven't been able to do that on a private basis ever. It's usually been one government or another competing for space because they realize that the country that controls the high ground is going to control the earth. And the global syndicate's been trying to control the earth, you know, since the dawn of time. What has really been great is, of course, the formation of the Space Force, which has allowed private industry to say, okay, now we can risk our money and we can invest in going after some of these assets in space. And that's why I hurried and got my book I've been researching for a long, long time called Asteroid Mining, The Future of Energy. It's now finished. It's in print. It's on Amazon. And I'm going to be doing a debut presentation about this at Contact in the Desert in Palm Springs. This is such an exciting field because although the rest of us are not really aware of a secret space program, we don't know about anti-gravity drive, or even if there is such a thing. What I see, and I'm talking to 6 major companies, and these are their survivors. Some of them have been acquired, some of them have gone out of business, but the technology keeps going up and up and up the ladder. And now the technology is ready, especially with these big launch engines now. We have the Falcon Heavy, we have this Falcon Super Heavy, which some people haven't even seen a picture of it yet. It's so new. I have a picture of it in the book. But this thing is able to lift incredible amounts of weight. When we can launch this technology that's being built all over the United States right now into space and put it all together, we now have a network that we're building that is not going to be orbiting Earth. It's going to be orbiting the moon. We're going to set up GPS around the moon in the next 18 to 24 months. Thousands of satellites already built, already in nose cones, ready to go. Once these are distributed and linked to targets on the moon, we will have GPS capability on the surface and in orbit around the moon, which we've never had before. This means that we don't crash into the moon anymore, because the moon has this really weird gravitational field because of all the heavy asteroids that are sitting on the inside of it. But we can navigate it now, and we can go harvest things like helium-3 and titanium and water even. There's huge craters bigger than the Mount Everest that are full of frozen water. That means rocket fuel. That means oxygen. That means water. And we can begin colonizing the moon. I think within 30 years, we've got something really serious that we can go forward with. And this opens a frontier, which changes man back into an explorer race from being a warrior race.
Or a genetically modified race, you know, because we've been so kind of tinkered with.
I'm the first. I was genetically modified 5 years ago. I'm here. I'm alive because of it.
Oh, but I mean, on a consciousness level, the physical things that are available as far as medical breakthroughs with technologies is a little bit different than, you know, what we're seeing with 5G and the separation from our soul matrix in order to continue to modify us into more enslaved positions. So what are your thoughts, Brad? Like, I mean, obviously there's been cover up, there's been secrecy, there's been disinformation in the UFO community since really early on, you know, pretty much after Paperclip and Roswell, and how that, you know, was really like pushing a lot into secrecy in the Eisenhower administration particularly, and the administrations following. I mean, how do we find that boundary between those that are really out to get us and these huge breakthroughs that Brooks is talking about? Yeah, and then Dan, if you want to chime in on that and then refresh a question with starting with you. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, I think we need to get back onto the timeline of our Star Trek future. You know, Star Trek is humans exploring space peacefully 300 years from now. And you have Gene Roddenberry sitting in on the Council of Nine seances talking to humans in the future 350 years in his time, which was 50 years ago, when they were getting the Star Trek episode ready to roll out in the late 1960s. He was writing down what they were translating from humans in the future, telling us about free energy technology, about exploring the universe peacefully, about not getting involved with developing civilizations, about the Prime Directive, they called it in Star Trek, about no money. You'll never see in a single episode of Star Trek the exchange of money. You say, I want a chocolate shake, the materializer just has it come out for you. So this is the timeline one. This is the future that we could very well see ourselves in coming out of this whole lockdown. This is the positive future that I'm envisioning, and what the human race is really on a trajectory for achieving. And if we can achieve this, if we can get rid of the bad guys who have been withholding all this technology, information, keeping us in this false matrix, this fake money world, believing this illusion, which is really a delusion, if we can get beyond that and get back onto the Star Trek timeline, which is us in 300 years from now, it's very possible that we could have a golden age that has been prophesied ever since the ancient Greeks. This whole notion of a utopia on this planet, turning the deserts into gardens. Just think, with free energy being rolled out, we could just have desalination plants everywhere. Mm-hmm. Look, the planet is 79% covered with water, salt water. If we can just turn that into fresh water, we could clean up the oceans with free energy. We can make the deserts bloom again. We could do so many things that would benefit humanity. But we're really walking on the razor's edge right now that, hey, maybe this whole thing is going to become the New World Order nightmare we've all heard about. Or maybe it will be the white hats removing these people from power during this dark time we're about to experience.
You've gone so far with exposing the crimes against humanity, and so many criminals have been brought to the public. I can't imagine that could just be shoved back under. So I guess, thank you for these responses. Dan, what can you say about all that? And then after you answer, if anybody else has any thoughts to share about the AI transhumanism component to technology and our advancement as a human race.
Oh, there's so much to say on this. Barbara Barrett, the Secretary of the Air Force, said, we have way too much stuff that's classified. We've got to start releasing it. So this is the beginning. And, it's interesting that Obama did the Space Act 2015 that, about what Brooks was talking about mining the asteroids. And we got a wealth of stuff out there to be able to mine. But the Space Act was actually protecting corporations from human rights abuse type of thing. There's been a sort of a Nazi mentality of using slave labor on a lot of these operations, and it's China has been doing a lot of espionage, as stealing patents and things. And I think it's kind of brilliant what the US Navy has done by releasing these patents that having to do with fusion, electrogravitics, all these super advanced technologies. They're putting it out in the public while it does two things. One, it protects the patents that the US has produced. So if the Chinese are using our technology, they're going to have a little patent lawsuit. Secondly, it brings awareness out into the public that we haven't needed rockets. Werner von Braun and Disney was trying to sell us on rocket propulsion. Elon Musk is doing his rocket propulsion. But, when I went to the press club, we revealed to the public that we've had alien reproduction vehicles that can go faster than the speed of light. We've had these technologies since the mid-1950s. When your great-grandfather was president. And so all of this is a charade that what I'm interested in is, all this is fact and reality. We have so many witnesses and proof and documents and patents that how are they going to psychologically, I'm sure the plan is laid out with incredible minds trying to figure out how to transition from a completely hijacked technologically and every other aspect planet to a planet that is releasing these advanced technologies where we no longer need the pharmaceutical corporations anymore. We no longer need nuclear oil and coal. We can, as Brad was saying, we can make the deserts bloom with desalination because we have free energy to desalinate. Just about every aspect of life could be transformed on this planet when you consider that these dark elements that have been in control of our perceptions through Hollywood, through our news media, through our education system, all the stuff that we were taught about history, no, wrong. So, we're at a very excited, I'm feeling very excited. This is like a moment in history that is going to be one of the most historical events of this earth.
Dan and Brad touched on something very important. There's a myth, a taboo that has been put forth by the global syndicate for a long, long time. And that is that you can't do away with the haves and the have-nots. You have to have the have-nots. And that is just simply not true. Look at the United States. I mean, the poorest person in the United States is wealthier than 2/3 of the world. We are proof that when people have access to bounty, to electricity, to clean water, they don't just run wild and overpopulate the planet and ruin it. Mm-hmm. When the global syndicate wiped out the middle class in 1929 for their own whim, just because, they just smashed the whole world because they didn't want the middle class playing in their backyard. That mindset has to end. Brad is correct. This new economy, I don't know if it's a gold-backed currency or a totally different system of trade that doesn't even require currency to make a trade between value and energy. But something has to happen to end that paradigm.
So how much is the inner work? I mean, people need to do the inner work to break the agreements and ties and hooks with the old system, the cabal, where they have unconsciously been giving their power away or willingly without really knowing the layers beneath that are incredibly dark and nefarious. So there's, you know, that inner work aspect. Where could you help guide people on what are the most detrimental beliefs that we could be holding right now, and what makes this administration different than other ones? Because a lot of people are like, how could anybody even have faith in this president or this administration? All presidents are compromised, and you know, both sides of any political party are owned by the cabal. So 2 questions, and whichever one jumps out to you. Where would you direct people to release themselves the most in doing their inner work? And what makes this administration different than the rest or what we've seen in a long time?
Well, the main thing that makes the administration different, go back to the inauguration. When President Trump said, this is not the peaceful transition of power from one political party to another. This is the transfer of power from Washington, D.C. back to you, the people. That's not a political party. That's not a political party. That's what's made it all different. And that's why they hate him so badly, because he's taking apart the structure, the Tower of Babel that they have built. He's tearing it apart. And I think that's the main difference. He's empowering us.
Right. And because we're not, you know, promoting a political party in this talk, we are empowering humans to know that the power is more in our hands and in the hands of the people than it's ever been for a long time, is what basically you're saying.
Yeah, it's only been barely 3 years, and they've been beating the hell out of him every day for those 3 years. So.
I know. What about you, Brad and Dan?
Yeah, well, he survived the Mueller investigation, nothing there. He survived the impeachment, nothing there. This is the last thing they have to go after him to collapse the economy and blame it on him. But it's their final bullet, because the economy, the fake fiat currency economy, is what they depend upon. Look, at first I thought Donald Trump, he wasn't in the military. He's never held public office. How is he qualified to do this? But now that we see we have a complete outsider coming in here to shake up the system, who took no lobbyist money when he was running for election, so he's beholden to no one. If you think about it, he is the perfect candidate to do this kind of major transition, and also to erase the national debt. He's very good at bankruptcy restructuring. And I think he was approached by the military a few years before 2016 election and had agreed to be the guy to do it, because he has benefited and believes and loves his country, to be the head of the military to take this whole cabal out. And you're right, Brooks, that's why they hate him so much, because they can't control him. So this is a really interesting period to see if he's going to come out of this, because the other day he gave a press conference. He wasn't looking too happy. I think there are people that are trying to control him. But did you guys catch it yesterday? He said at a news conference, he called the State Department the Deep State Department. So he's starting to call them out now. I love it.
I love those little slips. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those clips.
And the thing that I can't stand is that people are going to probably go under this video and just be like, I can't believe, you know, you act like you're pro-Trump supporters. And people need to just really lay off. And I guess that's, you know, part of what I feel the inner work needs to be, is that people step back and see a much, much larger picture. Anyway, I wanted your comments too, Dan, on, you know, just what do you feel makes this administration different? And thank you so much for your answers, Brooks and Brad.
Now, pay no attention
so
to
glad
the
you guys are here today.
Great Again hats in the background.
Wait, what'd you say?
I said, pay no attention to the Keep America Great Again hats in the background here.
Right.
You bring up a really good point here, all of you, especially Laura, on the idea about, we're not a bunch of right-wing Trump supporters on here. We are people who are against deception. We're people that are for truth. And what Trump represents is something much larger than just a political party, like Brooks was saying. This is about returning control of our planet.
Yes, and that's what we need more than anything else. And we you know, people need to just kind of like not go into all the flaws. I mean, it's that whole throwing the last. I mean, none of us are perfect. We are healing a tremendous amount of trauma from our history, a lot of infiltration of bloodlines, of, you know, pretty much every power structure under the sun has some level of manipulation or falsity. I mean, empowerment is everything, because we have what it takes to heal, to rise above, and to be more co-creative and directive of our futures and what's in front of us. So, you know, the importance of like the inner work though, and bringing it back to ourselves, and this whole concept of ascension. Do you feel this is something that's just naturally unfolding and people better just catch up, or is it an inner initiation that's going to bring about seeing a timeline that reflects back to us the inner progress that we're making? Because I just see so much pettiness, and it just, and I think it's because we're in a sort of a growth period and a crisis as a human race. But what do you think the most important things to focus on right now, while we don't have maybe the exact answers?
Well, for one thing, I don't think ascension is natural. I think that the natural thing for man to do, at least at this point in time, is to be greedy and to think about yourself. It is a time for great teachers to step forward and teach people about ascension and what it means. And I think there's never really been a time, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, that teachers who know what ascension is, you don't have to die to ascend, can go out and teach people, can hit this forum right here that we're doing right now and reach people and tell them that there's hope. It isn't natural. It's a little bit of a outside your comfort zone, but once you're in it, once you realize you're on the path, it totally changes your life. It changes all your priorities.
It seems like we're getting out of confinement though. I always look at the metaphor of we're being given the key to like leave the zoo cage, but people are afraid of their natural habitat because it's been so long that it's almost the most natural thing to us is not something we easily embrace because we're so used to being told what to think. But yeah, that's why it doesn't really feel natural. What are your thoughts, Brad and Dan?
As we enter this age of ascension, it's a wonderful opportunity to witness all this. Grab the popcorn, because this is the greatest show on earth. And I think the ET races who are very interested in Earth are also looking at what's going to happen here, what is happening here, with great fascination. How could they not be? This is a race, as I mentioned, we're in this Star Trek timeline, this ability for the humans to finally get it together here on Earth, to rid ourselves of these roadblocks, and then to join them in a peaceful understanding and save this planet and make it healthy again, make ourselves healthy again. This is our opportunity. This is it. If we have a role to play, as you said, Brooks, as people who can help make sense of all this to a lot of people who are going to be incredibly shell-shocked by all this information that we've been all talking about for years and we're quite accustomed to, including the darkness in our own human race and some of the things they've done to even see some of the people that we thought were really good people being involved in this. Well, it's just the way it's got to be. And this is just, we're just going to let the cards fall where they may. And at the backside of all this, help interpret how it came to be this way and how we move on. And I really hope that we can be like South Africa after apartheid and just have truth and reconciliation, honest trials for these people rather than a lynch mob going out and stringing them up. Because if we do it that way, then we're as bad as they are, aren't we? Yeah. So we have to take the higher road here, even when we start to hear how bad the crimes have been. We still have to take a higher road here. And look, Harvey Weinstein's going to be in jail for the rest of his natural life. He got what he deserved. And in some ways, sitting in a jail cell in a total hopeless situation, in some ways that's worse than the death penalty, because you're just going to have to ruminate about what you've done to people for the rest of your natural life. And look, he was very accustomed to a very luxurious lifestyle. Now he's sitting in a jail cell.
Yeah.
So there are ways to turn this around, and the bad guys will get what's coming to them.
Absolutely. So Dan, what are your thoughts on just the, the whole concept of ascension? I know it's been somewhat steered off into some sort of deceptive belief systems that maybe haven't allowed us to hold ourselves accountable enough. But what are your thoughts, though, about this ascension shift, or just the whole concept of that word? And
well, each one of us is, everyone that's listening to this and beyond is contributing to this collective reality that we're all in. It's been like a slow leak drip process that's been going on for some time through the internet, through different things. And a lot of people just watch, CNN, MSNBC, read the New York Times, but there's little glitches in the matrix that's happening. And so many glitches are happening that it's, instead of a drip, it's going to be turning into a flood. When I went to Washington, and after the years after, I became aware that, oh my God, the complete mainstream media is controlled. All of our representatives in Washington are pretty much, out of the loop. Everybody who should be in the loop is out of the loop. How, with all of this completely under their control, how could the situation ever change? And I felt a feeling of despair, because this is just going to perpetuate, because they control of our perceptions, they control our government. It wasn't until the Q post started coming out that I realized that oh my God, there is a white hat military operation, and there is a global awakening that's happening. And we're right on the threshold of something incredibly wonderful to happen to this planet, to liberate it.
I totally agree. And there's just no other way to go. I mean, I think people go into a place of doom and depression and, anger at times, but that's just a part of the processing. And eventually, there's clarity, above the bumpy clouds, we get clearer skies if we can just keep pushing through and not give up on ourselves, because the human potential is something we've been kept from. The fact that we have advanced DNA that we haven't embodied in a long time, that is there. So I can't believe we've only been talking for an hour. We cover a lot of material. Is there any questions or things when you thought about coming to this roundtable that any of you thought to yourself, wow, I'd really, love to bring up this topic, and it's really, relevant? I know we covered quite a bit, but anything kind of jumping out for any of you guys?
Well, I want to encourage people that are watching this. These are tough times. These are strange times. We haven't been here before. I often teach my kids, look, the way to do this is put yourself out in the future a little bit, and then look back at this and say, that wasn't that bad. That was a little strange, sitting around the house eating popcorn, got fat a little bit, but had more sex than I thought I was going to have in a long time. But hey, it wasn't that bad. So put yourself out in the future, look back at it, and you'll have a different attitude here in the present. It's not going to be that bad. We're going to make it through this together.
Totally beautiful. So anything kind of come to your thoughts about what we could maybe discuss, or anything that you feel relevant to share?
I just wanted to comment on what Brooke said, because I love that idea of looking from the future, looking back, the children of the future, looking back at the challenges the human race had to do on this planet with this Kabbalah, whatever you want to call it, and how it was liberated. They're going to be reading about this in the history books in the future, if they even have books in the future.
Oh, there's no doubt that 2020
will say that
2020 will go down in history. It'll be a year that little babies who are born right around now will remember this time and what their parents and grandparents went through. It's going to be that bellwether year. I can't even think back in history of such a moment. Look, we're not even 3 months into 2020 yet, and all the things that have happened and that are transpiring to happen. So this is all part of this great awakening that we're seeing take place. One topic that we talked about at the last roundtable that I think is worth reviewing again is all the predictive programming that went into this Wuhan virus that got released. And I do think there is ample evidence that it was a bioweapon. And we talked about several different predictive programming events that we've seen or leading up to this. One of them was this Dean Koon's book called The Eyes of Darkness that came out in 1981. We're talking about 39 years ago. And I pulled up this excerpt from the book on page 333. I'll quote, "They call the stuff Wuhan 400 because it was developed at their rDNA labs outside the city of Wuhan. And it was the 400th viable strain of man-made microorganisms created at that research center." And in the book, this bioweapon that was released on the world was called the Wuhan 400. Now that is just way too much to be a coincidence right there. That the Simpsons had an episode about releasing a Chinese virus. I mean, there's so many other, even some other books that had predicted this virus coming out of China. So when you put in the whole predictive programming into this too, it then shows you that the elite have been planning this, that Bill Gates did the 201, was doing a virus outbreak, even a coronavirus outbreak practice in October 2019, before any of this happened. So it's very interesting that we see all this stuff coming out before it happens. And that's the nature of what predictive programming is all about.
Right. Even the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash was in a cartoon. I think
that's right.
Simpsons. Dan, what were you going to say? Just any particular questions pop up as far as, what we might not have covered yet? I've got definitely one or two more questions.
Regarding the transformative technologies that could be released, we know that microwave radiation is not healthy for biological organisms. And you have to think about, in the secret space programs, are they using cell phones up to their head like that? I kind of doubt it. As technology evolves, we become more aware of what works in harmony with biological organisms and what doesn't. And I think, I see a world where the entire grid is going to be disassembled. Everything's going to have its own energy device. We're going to have communicated technologies that don't use microwave radiations, which is not healthy. Rockets are going to be an antique of the past. Everything is going to be much greater than anything we've ever seen in science fiction.
What I love about just empowering all this, because this is such an incredible day to really put it out there, because when we speak it, it becomes a reality. Our abilities to manifest really come through our voice. That's what this 5D Ascension was really, about, is getting an empowered throat chakra again. Can you so that we're speaking truth, and that frequency is shifting the collective instead of allowing the viruses to be spread through the words we choose to speak, because we're attaching ourselves to a programming or a propaganda that ultimately isn't healthy. So we generate either the virus or the truth. And through being authentic, even if others don't agree, that vibration alone can make a huge difference. So even if we all don't agree, just being in our authenticity and that vibration is huge. But I tend to agree with everything that you all have said.
That's true.
I do agree, and I've learned so much from what you've all shared. What'd you say?
Well, I think it's not only important to speak these words, it's important to write them down. We should keep a future book, a future journal, and we should put these things in that journal, because it sets a stake in the ground in the future to which we can tie that lifeline.
Totally.
Laura, I actually did that. On the webmatrix.net, I put a link to Imagine This, where people, like Brooks was saying, children in the future reading back, and I did like a historical visualization so that somebody could read this, and while they're reading it, they're imagining this in their imagination. Imagination is extremely powerful in affecting the collective reality. And so, of course, it was a happy ending in the best way possible. And, just the exercise of imagining and visualizing everyone who is listening and imagining this reality. It's not based on something that is, out of some imagination that is not based on something that's real. There's so much evidence that what we're all four of us are talking about is based on something that is very real.
Right. But then tapping into the creative imagination to bring in the right energies to co-create this process with clarity and not having to sort through all the confusion and entangled, thought forms and interferences. All of you are just putting out just such incredible information. And I know, Brad, you're putting out this book. And all of you and the material you put out is so freaking timely, of course. But, you have How to Get Out of the Enslavement, right? That's coming out. And do you have like tools and techniques for people to begin to cut away those harmful programs, or like what is what can we look forward to with that book? And then I want everybody to talk about what their next thing is, of course. But starting with you, Brad.
Sure. Well, of course, the book is pretty complex, but the three sections are going to be Neo-Fascism, showing how this government of ours has been taken over and made into a corporation, and all of us are entities on that corporate balance sheet. I go into the embargo, which Dan, of course, was on a panel talking about releasing this kind of free energy that would take us into this Star Trek generation. And now the final section that I'm working on now is called Ubermind, getting beyond transhumanism, looking at things that can heal us and help us all the way. And what I would say to people is try to just stay positive. Use this time to work on creative projects. Don't give in to despair. Don't give in to the fear or the anger about what's going on, or the schadenfreude and making fun of other people who are having a hard time through all this. Work on yourself. This is a great time to ascend personally, make some big changes in your own life, and then use this time as productively as possible. Good time to reconnect with your family. I know a lot of people are really are getting on each other right now, but it has to happen this way, that we go into this lockdown period, and to get rid of this virus, but also I think it really is a cleaning house right now, that the storm is upon us, and we're going to come out of this with some incredible news. So we may have to go through this period of a blackout, of not really knowing what's going on, maybe even seeing military exercises flying over or driving by. But Brooks made a great comment. As long as they're not UN and they're our own US military, which have all taken an oath to uphold the Constitution and protect us from enemies, international and domestic, that I think we're going to come through this in a positive way. And we should do this roundtable 6 weeks or 2 months from now, after all this, and see how many of these predictions that we're making today are going to come true. Oh,
I would love that. Absolutely. So if you could tell us about, your website and what you've been putting out there. You've been doing some amazing stuff. All three of you, of course. And Dan, tell us about your website, and you just did some recent interviews with Michael Salla. How did that go?
Oh, I had a great interview with Michael. I put it up on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Disclosure Witness. My online notes I was sharing with everybody, because after I went to Washington, I didn't understand, what happened. So I had to understand it. And so I put a chronology together going back to the 20th century. It's at thewebmatrix.net. Being a witness, I have made the conscious I even paid for my own way to go to Washington. I'm not going to make one penny at any of this just because of the witness status. I want to maintain that there's no ulterior motive or anything like that, but I encourage everybody else is doing books and everything like that. We need to educate the rest of the public. I'm just feeling really happy. I'm just enjoying what's going on right now, and I'm feeling kind of in a celebrative kind of state of mind. And I know it's strange. I know there's there's the left wing and the right wing, and the people who absolutely hate Trump, have been because of the weaponized media and everything like that. But I think, in talking to some of these and attempting to reconcile with the opposite side that's extreme, you find that at the core, everybody is against corruption, against children, about deceiving the public, about withholding technologies. Everybody, left and right, has a common. So I think there's a psychological operation that's going to ease all of the programming that has been going on through our mainstream media to the whole of the population, so that we can all be united in one race that's not being that we're not being weaponized against each other any longer, that we're all working together. And we know who the true enemy has been all these decades. And that's going to come into a public awareness, and that is a joyous thing.
It absolutely is. And before we get to you, Brooks, I mean, would you say that I don't want to say worst case scenario, but 5G rollout, mandatory vaccines, in the face of that, not really being able to protest, I mean, is just simple non-consent and making that loud and making those statements enough? I mean, if something rolled out tomorrow that is just another disappointment in the way that maybe the dark forces are trying to compromise us, what can we do as individuals in the here and now to just protect ourselves from those possibilities, even though they don't seem like they're going to manifest because of all these other things put in place? I mean, is there any particular crystals or stones, or, I mean, I've got I got more herbs and supplements and crystals. I mean, it's just like insane. Now I'm like, okay, I can probably, but I mean, what do you guys, I mean, if it was to breathe down our neck, what would you do if somebody was knocking on your door, metaphorically speaking, to do a vaccination, or 5G towers were being put in your local neighborhoods? What would be the first thing that you might react to in order to protect your energy field and to also create awareness, besides what you're already doing? I'm sorry if that's a tough question, but.
Load our guns and go to the underground bunker.
Right? We've started digging a hole, but we got quite a ways to go. But yeah, I mean, there's no point in looking at the worst case scenario. I just think, non-consent. It's one thing to be led, right, and just to follow whatever, but when we say, I do not consent, and we make these statements on a daily basis, and we also focus in on what we want to manifest, that can be, I don't know, do you think that that's enough?
To say, I do not comply.
That's right. I'm with you, Brooks. I think if I was forced with a mandatory vaccination, I would tell the people who are trying to do this that we have laws against this. And it was the Nuremberg trials putting on the Nazis after World War II and saying,
consent.
Yeah, that's right. You have to consent to any of these medical experiments. And I think untested vaccines are medical experiments on a mass level.
And that's the thing, yeah.
Right. And all a vaccine does is prevent the pharmaceutical company from being sued because of the vaccine.
Right. So, I mean, the more we know, the better, because if we do have those kind of rights and people don't exercise those kind of rights, then they feel like they have no choice, or they think it's for their higher good. Oh, they must be doing this because this is to help us. So as long as we can continue these conversations and you continue to put your voice out to help people with discernment to navigate these crazy times. I just have so much deep respect for the three of you and your voices and what you have to share. And Brooks, I know you got a book coming out and you've been kind of showing us. And what else do you have going on?
What have you done for me lately? This book just came out this week, so it's pretty new. It's my 11th book, Asteroid Mining: The Future of Energy. It covers 4 things. It covers low Earth orbit, which is the mess we've made of the orbit around the Earth. The big exposure to that right now is not necessarily a missile or anything like that, but it's cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the big risk in low Earth orbit right now, and there's a lot of things being talked about with respect to that exposure. And then cislunar, which is the space between Earth and the moon, and what's being done to map that and to put guideposts along the way so that it makes it far less risky for robotics and even manned missions back and forth to the moon. And then lunar settlement, setting up 3D printed structures, developing some of the volcanic vents so that we can have colonies under the ground that are protected from solar radiation. They can build atmospheres in there. They have microgravity in there. This is going to be done in the South Pole near Shackleton's crater. There's enough helium-3 there to power the world for 2,000 years in that one crater. We could convert all of the nuclear power plants on Earth over to helium-3 fusion and end nuclear waste forever. We could make electricity so cheap that it would be practically free to anyone who wants to use it. It would completely transform the planet. Then we talk about the space between between the moon and Mars. We call this cis-Mars. Right now we have to do a really complicated maneuver called the Hohmann maneuver, which is sort of like jumping from a moving train to an airplane. It has to be perfectly timed or you miss and you end up out in deep space. And we're trying to get ion drives and magnetic drives and fusion drives. Fusion rockets will change everything because it'll lower the amount of time it takes to go from the moon to Mars to about 60 days, which is a doable time. It's way better than 8 or 9 months. And then you can only do that certain times of the year. And then, of course, the asteroid belt, which is the 4th domain. This is a really strange one because it's all zero gravity. So people can't go out there and work for a lifetime. You can't have kids out there. That's a totally different thing. You don't have the ability to develop artificial gravity yet that I know of. So the asteroid belt is enormous. And then beyond that is the Oort cloud, which has got more material than, you could terraform every planet in the solar system with given enough time. The point is, platinum is out there, aluminum is out there, iron, nickel, titanium, lithium, everything we need is out there just floating. And a single asteroid could be worth Earth dollars, $4 trillion. One asteroid, one. And it would barely take a couple $100 billion to get to it. It is the future of energy. And it is going to start making not billionaires, but trillionaires. It's going to get to this Star Trek economy that Brad's talking about, because the money means nothing when you have that much value. And hopefully we get to the point where the 5th realm, which is L4 and L5, which are these gravity wells that sit along Earth's solar orbit around the sun, that are equidistant from the moon and the Earth. They're called L4 and L5. They're gravity wells. Normally they'd be loaded up with Trojan asteroids, but we could move our own asteroid in that space and turn it into a space station that would withstand solar radiation and provide a gateway to the stars.
Awesome. Thank you. So final question, at least from me, and then anything you guys want to, share as a closing.
We got to clean house first on this planet.
Right. So, we'll go around and have everybody, put your final words in, but do you all really feel the Draco reptilian agenda or the darkest of agendas that we've been dealing with? Do you feel the victory, and do you see or have heard anything about those that have been enslaved on other planets and used in slave labor or some sort of bartering or exchange Do you see that taking place and it's stepping down into the physical, or do we still have that battle to contend with, or we're in the midst of it right now? Which do you resonate with most?
Yeah, I think, speaking with Dr. Sala and his latest book about the U.S. Air Force, their secret space program that got kind of in with the CIA and a whole Nazi thing back when your great grandfather lost control, they've shifted alliances. They've moved from the Draco reptilians over to the Nordics. And the Nordics have far in advanced technology compared to what the Draco Federation has. So when you have military superiority, when you have higher advanced technology, I think they have it well in hand.
Right. Brad or Brooks?
Well, the Chinese have a character for crisis, and it means two things. It means danger, and it also means opportunity. And I think we're witnessing the opportunity to rid the planet of the Draco, the dark Archon network, bring in the light, align ourselves with the positive ETs, and reform this country. Here's something, you guys. Did you see that the podium at the press briefings in the White House, they have removed the United Nations flag, which was in the rear to the right. And also the seal, the presidential seal on the podium has been removed. And it just says the White House. So these are hugely symbolic moves, because what it's saying is we're no longer playing by the cabal's rule as United States corporation. We're moving back to becoming a republic. And let's face it, the United States is the bellwether country around the world. With our Constitution, with our military might, we are the nation that if we were to topple, then we could go into this very dark one world government, new world order, controlled by very elite technocrats who we don't even know who they are and they're not elected, or we could be getting rid of them and moving to this Star Trek future that I think is truly our destiny. And to do that, we do have to rid ourselves of this Archon network of the reptoids that have been underground and calling the shots for a long, long time. And it's time for the humans to take the sovereignty back on this planet. And that will radiate out.
Yes, absolutely. I look at it like we're going through a massive divorce as a humanity from the cabal. Any agreements we have, any relationship we still have with it, we are finally saying this relationship is not healthy. It's been betraying and deceiving. And ultimately, it's kept us in a low vibration of the negative ego construct it wants to sink us into and keep us addicted to. And I think it's a personal choice, like we've been talking about, to cut those ties and to declare that level of sovereignty over where we've ever been hooked into it on an ancestral level too, because we're healing so much on an ancestral level, that there's so many missions out there that we all share in common that don't really get much of a voice. And I'm just really glad that we've just covered so many topics. And so yeah, your answer to that question, Brooks, about draconian victory over the draconian empire.
Well, when I was finishing up Charm of Favor, which launched just after Christmas of 2018, I was feeling pretty low. And the reason is that what came out in that book not only was the global syndicate, which is pure draconian energy, but the fact that they don't like to lose, and that we've sort of driven them back into a corner. They're cornered, and a cornered beast is very, very dangerous. So the reason I was kind of blue about it is because I believed we were in the most dangerous spot that this republic has ever been in since the day it was formed. That the global syndicate is immensely powerful. Their weapons are dark and terrible. and they're scared and they're cornered, and their soldiers are being hit right and left. They're going to prison, they're resigning, they're losing their power, they're getting out of office where they can no longer help with their billions and
Oh
their
yeah, all the
authority.
CEOs stepping down is incredible. Anyway, keep
Absolutely.
going. Yeah. And next to him, all these
They're
human
huge.
trafficking being exposed. Anyway, keep going. Yeah.
So I think the draconian empire is crumbling, but make no mistake, the global syndicate's very powerful, and I think it is supernatural in its basis, and it's going to be almost impossible to defeat it. But now, after 2 years after the book came out, I'm feeling more like Dan. I'm feeling much more optimistic. I'm feeling that we have momentum is in our favor, that the light is going to win.
Yeah.
And hopefully we do it. Hopefully, whatever this virus was supposed to be, maybe it didn't get there. Maybe it got swapped out. Maybe our energetics neutralized it. I don't know.
Yep.
But I think this virus was meant to be something way worse than what it is.
Yep. And each one of us has to claim this victory by doing what it takes to make the personal changes so that we're living a way of life based on our higher mind and principles that are becoming a way of life. We're anchoring it into the physical plane so there's no contradiction, or living a double life, or having your higher self but you still hate your job and you're not doing something, you know, that makes the world a better place. I mean, people have to make these practical changes for that circulation to flow and manifest, for them to see, you know, that they are needing to push this in the right direction on a more personal level. And I also look at it like we can't wipe out the mosquito population, but understanding it, we can learn to protect ourselves. Get like the right candles, the right scents, the right essential oils, and the right mosquito net. We can deal with something that's adverse without it kicking our butt. Ultimately, it's only making us stronger and wiser.
Yep.
So, and you guys embody like taking on such a journey and coming up with nothing but brilliance and important information for the rest of us. And I'm so grateful that you all joined me. Is there anything?
You do that.
Do what?
You embody that.
Well, thank you.
We all look up to you.
Oh, well, that's sweet. I just feel the soul family, and that's just, is just incredible. So anybody have anything to say as a closing note before we say goodbye? And we'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah,
Victory
I think
to the light.
What'd you say?
Victory to the light.
Nice.
You'll never take my freedom.
Any closing
those who have been paying attention know that they tried several times. They tried to nuke Honolulu. They tried to nuke Japan. They all got taken out. They're on top of it. The Patriots are in control, and this pandemic is nothing. It's you know, considering what could have been, this is the perfect opportunity for transformation today.
And we've been dealing with the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, and it's on the South Node. We had an eclipse gateway in December and January, and basically the Pluto-Saturn conjunction on a South Node is the end of the old paradigm. But because the death process can involve even getting sick, because people are afraid to let go of the old paradigm, I mean, that is going to lower the immune system. But it absolutely is a time of transformation and letting the old fall away. And it's amazing. So this is an incredible time. Everybody feel a lot of hope, and just keep that creative flow going. And yeah, I will make sure to put all your info in the description. And it's hard to say goodbye, but you know, unless anybody has any questions or anything else to share, I'm just like ready to just sit back and just digest all this. What about anybody? We're good? Ready to close? I guess so. Okay. Well, thank you for your incredible presence. I feel so uplifted, and I will get this link to everybody and to you, and have a wonderful rest of your day, you guys, and we'll stay in touch.
So enjoy sharing it with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.